Okay, so today we're going to try to explore Minmus, and by that I mean not just fly by Minmus, but actually explore it, as in land. So what we have to do is fly there, and then land and transmit data, or recover it from the surface, but I'm going to try to transmit it. And since our deep space network has been upgraded, I think that it will be possible to use a smaller antenna to transmit. So what I'm going to do is probably use the same craft as I did to get to the Mun, maybe with some upgrades. I've already accepted this contract. Gene Kerbin says it seems to be a fair offer, so I will now leave the facility, leave the admin building. Let's go into the VAB and load up our Mun Explorer. Okay, so let's open our Mun Explorer that we used to successfully land, take off, and return from the Mun. Let's see here. I wish there was a way to sort this by recently used. So let's see, Mun Explorer and Lander. 61 parts and 5 stages. Is that what we used? Let's see. Okay, yeah, that looks very similar to what we used. Right? I think so. It had, basically, the fourth stage has solid rocket boosters, and the third stage has some liquid boosters, and then the second stage has liquid boosters as well, and finally the first stage has enough to land on the Mun. The total craft has about 3,800 meters per second of delta V, which should be sufficient to get to Minmus. We'll see, though, if this craft in an unaltered form is enough to get there. Maybe with some skill, it could be. Because, you see, most of the energy expended here is just to lift the craft out of the upper or the lower atmosphere. The remainder of the craft is to get it into a low carbon orbit, and then stage it into an orbit that can fly to Minmus. So let's try and launch this. Yep. She's a cutie patootie. Alright, so let's go ahead and maximize our thrust, turn on our stability assistance system, and launch. Alright. So do our gravity turn. Okay. Yeah, it really wants to return back to its original position, doesn't it? But I can try and temper any changes in orientation by adjusting the fins. As you can see, we are going up rather slowly, and we're still in the thickest part of the atmosphere. Alright, now that fourth stage has been disengaged. So now, we've got our gimbaled engines. I'm just going to go ahead and try to orientation here while remaining stable. Not the easiest task. Maybe a few more reaction wheels would help with the stability here. Let's see. But we're doing our gravity turn, as you can see. Let's see here. Alright, so just a second here. I'm going to now check my trajectory. Okay, so we are at 47,000. Yeah, we need to expand this a little out more until our apoapsis is in outer space, which is about 70,000 meters. Alright. So now I'm going to cut the engines. Okay, so I'm going to do a burn up here at this apoapsis to circularize it, circularize the orbit, put us in a low Kerbin or LKO orbit. Let's see, we've got 1319, 13, let's see here. Alright, so just enough in these engines now to circularize this orbit. Okay, so when is our node time? It's in 1 minute 18 seconds, and the burn time's 42 seconds. So at T-minus 21, I'm going to start the burn. Let's orient ourselves here. As you can see, it's rather difficult to orient this huge craft just with reaction wheels, because it doesn't, the reaction wheels are rather small relative to the size of the entire craft. So I'm carefully orienting it until I reach the target vector, at which point I will make sure that it stays on that vector, which shouldn't be too hard during the burn because all the engines are gimbaled. Okay, T-minus 30. At T-minus 21, we're going to do a full throttle burn. Alrighty. So, as you can see, our orbit is gradually getting wider and wider. And it looks like we're doing okay with the delta V. enough delta V in our third stage to circularize this orbit. If not, no big deal, since we've used most of it. The energy up anyway. Okay, so... Okay... Now this very fine refinement stage, you have to be careful to keep the vector oriented. Alright. Okay. Now I'm changing my orientation very carefully. Alright, I think we are good here. Yeah, that looks good to me. So, we're in orbit. Now we have to plan our orbit, or our staging burn to not the Mun, which is here. The Mun's about 11.4 million. We have to plan our staging burn to Minmus, which is 46.4 million meters. And you'll notice that Minmus is quite inclined, which is not a problem. That can be accommodated. Let's make it our target. So, first things first, we have to make sure that we're coplanar with its orbit. Mechanically, it might have been possible to use the Mun for some kind of gravitational slingshot. I'm not 100% sure. It just seems to me like, you know, the combination of positions here is not favorable for that. Also, the fact that the inclination of Minmus is so high relative to the Mun seems to indicate that a gravity assist would be more difficult. I'm going to try to avoid the Mun and just go directly to Minmus. So for starters, we're going to have to do an inclination burn. So let's see here. I can do a burn here at the ascending node. You can see the node is at like 7.2 degrees, which is too angled. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, is that going the right way? Looks like it. Alright, 2.3 degrees. Alright, so 1.0, 0.2, 0.1, can get it to 0.0. Alright, so that's going to require about 290.4 meters per second of delta V, which is not trivial, but not too much. It's at T minus 25 seconds, which is coming up real fast here. I'm gonna need to, as you can see, orient myself. I might miss this because it's so slow. Getting close to the burn here. The target. Okay, so technically we're over time now. I'm gonna burn. Alright, so I need to disengage this stage. And let's start. So now we're burning the second stage as fuel. So now it's much easier to control this craft because it's so much smaller. Our orbit is, yep, inclination is increasing. Okay. Alright. What happened? Oh, zoomed out. Alright, now we need to do some fine-tuning, which is not too difficult. as you can see, that used up a lot of the fuel already. Okay, let's look at our orbit. So that's our orbit versus what we intended it to be. To me, I don't know if it's good enough or not. Seems to be a little bit offset, but we don't want to burn up too much delta V, so I'm just gonna do that. What is our... oh, it's 0.9. Yeah, see, that's what happens when you miss your time, right? So what I'm going to try to do is 1 degree is still fairly off, so I'm going to add a maneuver here and get that down to 0. 0.4, 0.0, okay. And that's going to be 30, which is not too much. 30 meters per second of delta V. It's going to be a 4-second burn. Alright. Let's orient ourselves properly. Okay. At T-2, we start our burn. Alright, I think that's good enough. I think our orbits are matched now, or coplanar. So now we have to plan on how we're going to reach Minmus. So what we can do is add a maneuver and increase our prograde vector so that the orbit matches Minmus. So already we're getting close to a close approach here. And I can adjust these vectors here, these maneuvering vectors, in my in this little display on the lower left here. So what I can do is change where I do my burn and increase my vector here. Alright, so I just want to design the orbit so that there's minimal fuel burn here. Okay, yeah, there we go. So as you can see, you notice that there are interactions with the MUN, which is not desirable. I want to get to Minmus without interacting with the MUN. So how do I do that? Let's see here. Okay. Okay. So that's going to be 920 meters per second. And which is not the best, because that will use up all of my second stage and my part of my first stage, which I do not want to happen. However, that you have to factor in as well that Minmus is a much lower gravity world than the MUN, so that might not be mission ending right there. Okay, I think that, yeah, let's see here. What is going on here at the side of the orbit? there's going to be an approach. There's going to be an approach, so we can do a burn there. Okay, so if I do a burn there, right, I say accept this orbit, and then I do a burn here, what happens? So if I were to suddenly, yeah, and what would that require? I'm not sure what delta V that would require. You can see there's a retrograde burn that I'm going to do there, and that's going to put me in orbit around Minmus. So I can change the parameters later if I want. So that, therefore, at that point, that's my orbit design so far. So for starters, we need to orient ourselves to this next burn. Alright, so orienting, getting ready, and then okay, on target. Alright, the burn time is going to be 1 minute 40 seconds, so at T minus 40 I would say, right, because 60 is 30, or T minus 50 I would say is when we start our burn. That's halfway through. You can see that I've turned on like all my debris in the orbit tracker, so you can see like different debris that is orbiting Kerbin. In future missions I can do cleanup missions to deorbit those debris, basically all that orbital debris. Okay, minus 50, right? So burn. My cool little, it's got the nice AVR8 winglets. Oh yeah, we can also, let's see, so that we can do both upstream and downstream communication. We can extend this antenna here. Okay. Alright, there's the Hmong. Right. And you can see my delta V that I need is 500, and I'm down to like 150, so pretty soon I'm going to be decoupling this second stage. Alright. This LV909 Terrier has some pretty good gimbaling. Alright, so slowly but surely we are reaching our intended orbital trajectory. Okay. Are we on an intercept course? We are not. So this highlights the importance of being very accurate. Do some very... Okay. That should work. Okay, so now we are on a direct course. Direct course for Minmus. And the next burn is going to require 197.9 meters per second, which is really very minimal compared to all the burns that we've needed so far. So, it looks like we are on our way. We're on our way to Minmus. Do a prograde block. We're on Kerbin's night side right now. You can see that's our trajectory right there. Inclined, tilted somewhat, and very, very elliptical. We'll see the sun soon. Kerbal, as it's called. There, sun. Alright, so let's fast forward, or time warp to our next maneuver point, or close to it at least. 6 days, quite a lengthy period of time. Of course, Minmus orbits far out from Kerbin, so that's no surprise. Alright, so we way out of the orbits of both, well, far from the Mun as well. Okay, time warp's complete. Going back onto a retrograde vector, it almost looks like we're in deep space, though you can still sort of kind of make out Kerbin and the Mun. Can we see Minmus yet? See, Minmus is so small that it's almost like... Oh, there it is. So, we are definitely approaching it. And let's see if we can fine-tune the parameters of this burn. Okay. Yeah, we can have a circular orbit, right? We can try to do... Let's go for... yeah. a yeah, I'm going to try to go for make a sharply elliptical orbit first, and then bring the apoapsis down to make it a circular orbit. That's only requires marginally more delta V. So let's fast forward to the Minmus encounter point. Takes a whole day. Alright. Our node point, as you can see it's approaching, is coming fast. So on this green line here, that's our maneuver line. What we can do, so let's see, I'm gonna bring it closer to the Perry. So that way it requires less energy. Alright, and so then, yeah, that should work. Okay. Alright. That's going to take 17 seconds, so really not much time at all. Let's warp. Okay. T-minus 8 minutes. Let's switch to stability assist, orient ourselves to the vector, and then okay, we're locked on the vector. It's pretty much on a retrograde, locked to retrograde as well. No surprise there, because it's a slowing down burn. Let's see, can we see? Maybe not quite yet. If we see Minmus in through the crew cabin. You can see the sun. Not quite Minmus. Not yet, at least. Okay. Alright, so let's fast forward to the T minus, I'd say, 9 seconds. Okay, burn. Alright, let's look at the orbit that we're making. See? Now it's gradually becoming elliptical. Alright, our Perry's coming down. Want to get it real close. So you can see it doesn't take much effort at all, much of a burn at all to get that orbit really low. Alright, so we have the periapsis done. We can then lower the apoapsis when we get to the periapsis. Let's see. As you can see, we're far away from Kerbin, even the Mun. Okay. Okay. I can add a maneuver here. Retro burn, which is like this retro burn doesn't require hardly any energy. Okay, let's see what that'll make our apo. Alright, it'll make our apo 55. fiddling with it here. Do it anew. Okay. Alright. What, I'm just gonna do that. Yeah. Because we want the periapsis to also be on the sun-facing side. So I'm gonna do a retro burn to do that. So we can fast forward over to here. As you can see, it takes a long time to orbit because we're actually quite far away from the body since it's so small. Okay. Alright, so right now I'm at a retrograde orientation. Let's see. We've already been in space for 11 days now. Okay, we're getting close to the surface here, aren't we? Landing on this might be more challenging than it seems at first, because landing might be more or less challenging, I don't know. It seems like if my speed is going to only be like 100 and 200 meters per second, that should be easy to slow down from. So do I need to even do a retro burn that will circularize my orbit, or can I just land on the surface here? I don't want to land on the top of a mountain that I'm going to slide down, so I'm going to have to figure that out. See, there's these icy plains here. I imagine are icy plains, and then there's these hills. So let's see here. Well, I'm just gonna, let's see. Let's move this burn over here, just to the periapsis. And what does the periapsis look like? You know what I could do is try to aim for this ice plain here as my landing site. Could do that. So let's get to the peri. Okay, we're getting close to the maximum speed of our orbit because we're reaching the periapsis. So about 200. Not too bad, really. Like, this engine should be able to retro burn that pretty easily. Oh wow, look at that. It's like an ice world. My question is, if Kerbin has liquid water, how does an icy moon survive so close to the sun? Anyways, let's see. I'm just going to try to reduce my periapsis here. Just do the 33% burn. Bring that orbit in. Okay. Now we are very close to suborbital, so we need to be careful here. I'm just slowly. Yeah, I'm already suborbital. As you can see, the position vector has changed, and I just want to get down into this icy plane here. Okay. Okay, see the blue line? It's getting there. I want to have as much margin as possible. So, looks like we're on a course to land. Alright, I'm just going to delete this planned orbit because it doesn't match our objective anymore. Okay, so yeah, it looks like we're going to land in that ice plane there. Alright, so let's extend the legs. I could have made that an action group, but I'll just do it manually this time. Alright. We're at about 100 meters per second, which is pretty easy for this engine to compensate for. About 14 kilometers above the surface. And it looks like we're going to land in this area here between what looks like a small mountain range. Oh, look. Nice view of some mountains. Yeah, this is definitely an easier world than the Mun to land on. Now, I hope I don't eat my words, so I'm still going to try and be as careful as possible here. But, let's see. Okay. Boy, that looks nice and snowy. Sparkly. Okay. Gonna speed things up a little here. You can see our speed is gradually increasing. I think this is where we're gonna land. Right here. Okay, so you can see our spacecraft is starting to tilt a little bit. It's tilting towards the surface. If I want, I can land farther away from all this, which will be easier. I can just land down in here. Of course, I'm still 9,000 meters above the surface, so let's see. Doing some burns here. It's just some adjustment burns. Okay. Okay, what's my altitude above the terrain? Terrain is about 7,100, which matches the altitude above sea level, which implies that this is an ice plane that's, I don't know, frozen over sea. It seems to be level with sea level. Or maybe they consider it to be sea level. Alright. Like 96 meters per second. It's pretty slow. I can also turn my RCS thrusters on for more fine control. Yep, I'm going to land in this plane right here. So, alrighty, just a second. Okay. Do a very slow burn here. As I upright, you can see my relative speed is decreasing. My shadow is starting to show up there. Okay, am I going to land vertically here? Because I want to orient myself vertically. It's going to be more difficult if I'm angled to the side. Alright, slowly but surely, I'm approaching the surface. Turn on my RCS. Coming down. Can I actually... Very, very, very soft landing. Excellent. And we're on the surface. Now, one problem, which you may have noticed, is that our comm link is with Kerbin is not active. And that is because we are right now facing away from Kerbin, even though we're facing towards the sun. So like, there's Kerbin, there's us, and we are basically on the opposite side here. So what we can do, there's several things we can do here. We can first collect a report, right? So let's see, collect a crew report from Minmus Greater Flats. You record the crew's assessment of the situation. Okay, so I can keep that experiment and maybe transmit it later. So I'm going to hold on to that experiment. I can also do an EVA right now. Hopefully that won't tip over the lander, because it is very top heavy. So let's see, let's do an EVA. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to turn my RCS on my suit if I can. If not, I'll just jump. Okay. Alright. Well, that wasn't too bad. It seems like Minmus's gravity is much less intense than that on the Mun, so falling is much more gradual. Oh yeah, like I'm really hopping when I run. Okay. Well, I'm on an icy plain, it looks like. So, while my landing was successful, it doesn't really look like there's that much to do here. What I can do is collect an EVA report. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my experiment because it's an EVA report from Minmus Greater Flats. You feel a bit like a superhero when you jump in the low gravity. Okay, so I'm going to keep this experiment. Okay, and yeah, if I jump, you can see that, wow, almost like you gotta be careful, because you might almost reach escape trajectory just by jumping. Alright, yeah, this is really, really low gravity. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is plant my flag. Maybe a little bit here along the equator. Save on RCS fuel. Alright. Yeah, let's plant the flag right here. Here's our flag. This is like the flats, right? So, flag in the flats. He's so ecstatic that he's jumping on his own. Okay, so it is planting this flag here feels great. I almost can't stop hopping. Because it's so, the G-force or gravity is so low. Okay. Well, there we are. So I'm wondering how much time it will take for our rotation to match the rotation, or to face Kerbin. Hopefully we're not tidally locked to Kerbin, right? I don't know the details of this world. So what I'm gonna do is go back here and see what I can do is walk back to my spacecraft, which is admittedly not very convenient for an EVAing Kerbin. or a Kerbal. Try to climb onto the hatch. Let's see if I jump. What to do is get up here. See, wow, look how high I'm jumping. Alright, can I reach my hatch? Good thing is when I land, I don't injure myself. Trying to figure out how to... Oh, yeah, I don't have this even on. Okay, so now I've got my RCS on. So I'm gonna try to go up. Can I do that? Is there a vector for... See, these little thrusters here, right? There is a thruster there on the bottom, so it should be able to go vertical. I just don't know the keyboard command for that. What's this? Okay, so I guess that's, yeah, T is, you know, so now my RCS is active, and then now it's retracted. So now it's active, so... Okay. Yeah, there we go. Alrighty, so let's, oops. Yeah, let's get on here. Okay, we're back on our craft. So let's, board. Okay, we're back in. Alright, so let's see here. We've planted our flag. And that will show up because I've showed flags. Like there's a flag on the MUN that's also there. I don't know if it's been highlighted right now. But that's basically what we have here right now. An EVA report. Stored data. We got stored data and a report. Excuse me. See, I don't want to spend too much time out here. Just guessing how... Let's see how long this will take to rotate. So I'm at a 10x time warp. What's happening to the sun? Is my shadow changing at all? Okay, it looks like my shadow might be lengthening a little bit. Let's see, at 50x time, right? But is my orientation relative to Kerbin changing at all? Okay. Looks like it. So if I just hang out, right? I'll eventually get a data link. There we go. We got a data link. We can transmit science. Just make it so that it's... okay, so the signal quality is good. Signal strength is 80%. Direct connection to the Space Center, ComNet. Alright, so let's go ahead here and see. So now we're in the dark. The sun has set. And there's Kerbin, so we can communicate, we can talk. Let's transfer. or transmit that science. Review report, and let's transmit that science. Okay, so transmit the data. Alright. Science data from the surface of Minmus. So that was successful. Transmit or recover scientific data from the surface of Minmus. We did that, so we are good on that front. We got 65 battery remaining. We can also do a review our stored data, transmit the stored data as well. So now I transmitted the EVA data. Okay. So that's 2 things done. Alright, okay. What I'm gonna do now is turn my stability assistance system on. Turn the SAS on. And let's take off. Alright, we're taking off. Our apoapsis is increasing. Now we're in sunlight. Okay, so it's like a 20,000. Alright, and then do another burn there so that we are, so that we're orbital. Right, close that. That's going to be 168 meters per second. Okay. I just want to... Oops. Stop that. Just increase the prograde vector to a reasonable level. So that... There. 143. Okay. Yeah, that looks ideal. It's just going to be a 9-second burn. So what we can do is orient ourselves to the target already. This world has so little gravity that I can just almost go up vertically and correct my orbit. Okay. I would do more takeoffs and landings, to be honest here, but I don't want to get stuck with no delta V. So alright, that looks like a good enough approximation. Okay. So at this point on, what I'm going to try to do is do a big burn to get back to Kerbin. Let's orient to the prograde vector here. Let's see. Ooh. Yeah. You know, I could hang out for a little bit here, right? And let's do an EVA. Do an EVA. Okay, so I need to hold on tight here and do an EVA report. EVA report. EVA report from space just above Minmus lowlands. You recorded your observations about the situation. Okay, so I'm going to, to conserve energy, maybe I can just keep that experiment and I'll bring it down with me. And then when we recover on Kerbin, we can just recover all that science. Okay, so we've got, you can store that one. So that data was above the highlands, I think, or lowlands. We can see what else, what other data we can collect. There's our flag. It's the flag in the flats. These EVAs are a great way to accumulate lots of science. When I get over this part, I'm going to try for another EVA report. Alright, let's try for an EVA report here over this section. Just above Minmus Flats. You've recorded your observations about the situation. Okay. So then I'm going to store it. So I got data from above the flats. I don't know if there are more possibilities or different terrain types here. What I'm going to do now is try to plan a burn that brings me down to Kerbin. So that would probably be a burn at the apoapsis point here. Oh, control node locked. Oh yeah, I don't think I can do that, right, because I'm EVAing. Well, what I can do is get back in my capsule here. Look at him. He's in outer space. Okay. Okay, B. Alright, let's plan this burn. I want to orient it roughly like so. Okay, with Kerbin. And let's, okay. Right, Kerbin periapsis. So what I can do is, that's going to be 108 meters per second, delta V. I can go ahead and increase my periapsis. That's still 2 million, right? 2 million meters. Let's see here. I've got about 1,500 meters per second of delta V left, so I have a reasonable budget here. Alright, so 1.8 million, right? Need to get that down from like 1.8 million to like 25,000. Okay, so that burn. Yeah, that should be enough, right? 29,000. A little bit more than that. Okay. It's it requires a very fine control. Let's see, go to the lower left here. 5 is too low. 36 meanwhile. 22. That's fine. 26 kilometers should be doable. Okay. That will put us on a re-entry trajectory with Kerbin. Kerbin. So, that's a T minus 5 minutes. Let's do an EVA over here. Okay, let's do a report. Lowlands. Alright, keep this experiment and then I'm going to store it. Okay, airport already stored. Okay, so we already had a report above the lowlands. And we might already have a report above the plains that we're approaching. Lowlands, plains, highlands. Something there, right? Since Jebediah is a pilot and he's not in the command module, the orientation is not being adjusted. So the spacecraft is kind of drifting a little bit. orientationally. Orbitally, it's on the right track. See over this mountain, any new EVA report? Yes. Midlands? Midlands. I think that's something new. Minmus Midlands. Okay, so now I'm going to store that. And alright, so I did it over the Midlands. That might be that mesa right there. Actually, not a bad place to land, it looks like, if you're accurate, because it looks reasonably flat. Alright, so let's board. I'm gonna board now. And let's orient our craft. But turn the stability assistance system on. Orient our craft. Alright. Towards the target vector. I think that's about what I'm going to accomplish here as far as reports. So, going to do our maneuver in T-minus 2 minutes. It's going to be 11 seconds, so about 5.5 seconds. T-minus 5.5, we're going to do our burn. Okay. Now. Okay. Alright, we're on an escape trajectory. Now we just have to fine-tune. You can even use the RCS for that. Disable that, and then re-enable. Okay, H. Let's see here. What does our trajectory look like? Pretty closely matched, huh? 53,000. Yeah. Perfect. That's excellent. We're on the exact correct trajectory. So now we just do a prograde. Just, turn those thrusters off because they're not necessary. We got reaction wheels. So now we're oriented on the prograde vector and headed towards Kerbin. Okay. Alright, so we are very rapidly ascending. Actually, if we do an EVA high above Minmus, does that count as additional science? Probably does, right? Let's see. We're gradually... let's do an EVA here. Okay. And let's do a report. EVA report. EVA report while in space high over Minmus. Let's keep that experiment and then store that experiment. And that's the 4th data unit, so we got data from that. Alright. Back in. So our Minmus escape point is T-minus 2 hours. I can fast forward us to that point. You can see us gradually flying away. Okay. Getting very close. Once we reach that point, we're going to assume this elliptical orbit here. Alrighty, as you can see, we're approaching that point. And then this might turn purple, right? Yep. Yep, it turns teal. So now this is our new orbit. It's a very elliptical one. And you can see we're going from here down here. So descending towards Kerbin, right? Now, one concern that I do have is that the velocity upon re-entry will be very high because the periapsis, it's just going to be really, really fast going from such a high altitude, right? So, thankfully, however, I think my heat shield has a reasonable number of units. So my heat shield has 100 units of ablator. So, we'll see. I think it's enough. Alright, so you can see that my orbit has been perturbed somewhat by all these interactions with Minmus, but in a way that's good because it means that I'm also avoiding interactions with the Mun. Let's see, let's do an EVA here. See if that gives us additional science. Doing lots of EVAs. So, EVA report. EVA report while in space high over Kerbin. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that before in this mission, so I'm going to keep that one. Keep that experiment. And then store it. Okay, so now let's board. Okay. Alright, so we are now, let's see, put our SAS on, prograde vector, right? And there's Kerbin, and it almost looks like we're falling down. So you can see, like from this perspective, right? If you think Kerbin is way below us, quote unquote, you can see how fast we're going to be by the time we get to the other side of it. It'll be very, very, very fast. Right now we're only going 92 meters per second, which is almost as slow as we were at a fairly low altitude above Minmus. So that will speed up to like at least 3 kilometers per second once we get to our periapsis. So our orbit is very, very elliptical, almost like a comet. Okay, so with that, we've already spent 12 days in space, and it's going to take us 6 days to get to the periapsis. What I can do is just fast forward here to about the halfway point. Semi-major, maybe? Close to the semi-major axis. Maybe over here. Warp here. And you can see I'm getting closer and closer to Kerbin. You can see the Mun getting closer to that. Minmus is gone. Too hard to see, too far away. And so we've warped to this point now. There's Minmus. There's the Mun. It's on actually the opposite side of Kerbin as we are. And there's Kerbin. So, let's see here. Actually, why don't I turn off... Yeah, I'm just turning off my debris. So that way it's a little less cluttered. You can see there's... let's see... Turn off flags too. My spacecraft, which has quite a bit of delta V left. You know, if I was going to do this mission over again, I think I would take off and land in multiple places, and that way I could do it like multiple EVAs from different parts of the surface, and I could get science for those. So that would really like boost my science a lot. So that's just food for thought for future missions. So now, why don't I go here? Let's fast forward here. You can see it took me several days to get to this halfway point from Minmus's orbit, but now it's only going to take me 1 day to get to here. 1 day, 2 hours. So you can see that I'm speeding up, and right now we're already at 390 meters per second, right? So let's warp to this point. So now we're closer to Kerbin than the Mun is, right? And so, as you can see, our speed is drastically increased. It's like basically 3 times what it was, and it's going to get faster and faster and faster, right? So now, let's see. I could try to do is decrease the drastic quality of this. Since I have so much fuel, like 1348 meters per second, maybe what I can do is do a correction burn to level my orbit, right? So level my orbit with, let's see. One thing I would have liked to do is set Kerbin as a target for maneuvers, but what I can do here is just say, like right here, even though it's going to cost a lot of energy, I can add a maneuver to stabilize or to right my orbit. See what I'm doing? Make it less drastic. And then, let's see. I guess something like that, right? 164 meters per second. Now the problem with that is, right, is that it alters this periapsis, so I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna just avoid that. We're getting close to our here, so now, and what's our altitude? Altitude is 6.5 million, I think, meters. Here, notice this is only taking 1 hour. So like it took us 4 days or so to get to this point, and then like another day to get here. But then to get from here to here just takes an hour. See, we're like really rapidly speeding up. So I'm gonna warp here. Okay. At this point, it's kind of unfortunate, but all this equipment here, my FLT 400, FLT 200, this battery, these landing legs, this monopropellant, which I have plenty left, I'm just going to have to decouple it and let it re-enter, because there's no way I can, it'd be nice to be able to just leave it in orbit, right? But unfortunately I can't do that. And I don't know what my delta V budget is, so, you know, I would like to circularize my orbit more, but I can't really, I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm stuck in space. So at this point, getting close to my periapsis, I'm going to jettison my first stage here. So let's go ahead and make sure we're prograde, right? So we're heading towards Kerbin. Take a screenshot. It's cool. It's pretty cool. I love these views. They're amazing. It's almost as good as actually being in space, playing this game. It's really, really cool. So now that I've done that, you know, I've got batteries. I used up a substantial amount of charge transmitting data from Minmus. I did, I think, 2 data transmissions, but still have plenty of juice left. Plenty of monopropellant left, plenty of liquid fuel left with oxidizer and the fuel. I guess it's better to have too much than too little, right? Because with our Minmus or our Mun mission, we almost ran out of fuel. So it's good that now we have way more than we need. So I'm going to decouple now. Bye-bye. And we can also, so we're about 1.5 million meters. So that thing is going to follow us, trail behind us. You can see my heat shield. my antenna. It's extended. And sooner or later, we're at like 1776 meters per second. It's July 5th, right? Speeding up pretty fast. Kerbin is getting larger and larger in our view. A little bit scary, to be honest. So, you can see our second stage, or our first stage, is slowly drifting away from us. The decoupler forced it away. Getting here, we're going to re-enter in like 17 minutes. Very, very quickly. I'm going to speed us up a little here to make it even more dramatic, right? Once we reach about 300,000 meters above the surface, I'm going to reorient us retrograde. It looks like, let's see, where are we going to re-enter? We're going to re-enter on the night side. Okay. As you can see, I'm at, I guess this is was it 5x? It was a 5x warp. 5x time warp. You can see we're already at like 2,000 meters per second, which is like a reasonably okay re-entry velocity, but we're still 1,000,000 meters above the world. So, above our home planet. I think we're going to hit 3 kilometers per second before we start slowing down. Why don't I, for safety purposes, just orient retrograde right now? Okay, and then I'm going to do this. As you can see, we're relatively like 45 degrees above the inclined above the surface. That's going to change to a roughly horizontal trajectory, I think, coming up here soon. Alright, so at our 10x time warp, you can see we're getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. Speeding up, speeding up. So we're gradually, I think 180 kilometers is the low Kerbin orbit point. Getting very close to an LKO altitude. Okay, so what I'm going to do now soon is I'm going to retract that antenna so it doesn't get damaged during re-entry. It matches the antenna, the heat shield, and the capsule and the parachute are all that's going to be recovered. Alright, so let's retract that. Okay. So now we cannot upload data, but that's okay. We're not going to upload. Okay. 3,100 meters per second. We're going fast. And We're getting very close to the atmosphere now. Our debris is about 1.1 kilometers away. Alright, we're in the atmosphere. Our ablator is starting to deplete now. It's getting red. 3.2 kilometers per second. Red hot. Super fast re-entry. You can hear in the distance my debris is blowing up and disintegrating. Actually, what that is this heat shield? Yeah, the heat shield itself, I guess, is being thermostressed, as you can see by that indicator there, that bar indicator. But it's not being thermostressed too much. You can see that my debris is doesn't have as much inherent braking in it, so like aero braking, so it's sped way ahead in front of me. Technically, that's kind of dangerous because it could have crashed into me. Let's see, so we are reaching the point where we're starting to approach a normal re-entry speed of about 2,000 meters per second. Oh yeah, see that parachute, right? 2,000, okay. Parachute's 2,000. It'll open up to 2,000 meters. Let's see. Yeah, we got a reasonable amount of ablator left. So, you know, with about 60 or so units, we're now slow enough that about 800 meters per second, there's no longer enough heat pressure to really, or heat or wind resistance to really reduce the ablator anymore. So we're just coasting now at about 17 kilometers. Okay, so the parachute pre-opened, and so now it's just trailing me and it's slowing me down further. So at about, you know, at 15 kilometers altitude, so I'm just sort of slowly slowing down to about, you know, I'm going 270 meters a second, and that will rapidly decrease to about 5 or 6 once the parachute fully opens at 2,000 meters above sea level. I think we're gonna land on terrain here. Looks like, I think these look like Badlands, but I'm not sure. There's one more thing I can do too. I'm thinking I might be able to do an EVA over the Badlands. Okay. Alright. Our chute has fully deployed. And yeah, these look like this is some pretty mountainous terrain here. This is where we are. Actually, not too far away from a station. Harvester massif. So, it seems like glacial-like terrain. I guess because if you notice the parachute opened far above 2,000 meters above sea level, so I think it actually opens 2,000 meters above AGL, or above ground level. Okay, so we can speed this up here. Do one more thing before recovering the vessel. I'm going to try to do his EVA over here and then see if I can collect a report. Okay, so we are going to land on what looks like some very angled terrain. Okay. Like some of the sharpest angled terrain I think we've landed on. Yep. Okay, so we're here now. We're landed. So now I can do an EVA, right? Okay. So let's see, EVA report. EVA report from Kerbin's Mountains. I don't think a spacesuit was entirely necessary to get here, was it? Well, it gives me 2.4 science, so let's keep this experiment and store it. Alright, so back in here, and let's recover. Okay, so now alright, so we've got a whole bunch of science. So EVA report from space just above Minmus Lowlands, right? So Minmus Lowlands, that was 32 science, an EVA report. From space above Minmus Flats, 32 science. Above Minmus Midlands, 32 science. EVA report in space, so that was when I was leaving Minmus. I did an EVA, so that counted for 20 science. And then the EVA report while in space high over Kerbin, that was 12. And then Kerbin's Mountains was 2.4. And I got 34 or 37.5 science also from the vessel that was recovered from Minmus. So since my vessel landed on Minmus and got recovered, that gave me a lot of science, like 37.5. And I think that's in addition to the science that was transmitted. So so this is just the recovered science. So there's a lot of science that was recovered, and I think like, I don't know, 20 or 30 science that was transmitted. So in total I earned 167.9 science. Plus probably there's more, like, I don't know, 40. So next we got parts. So we got our command pod, the communitron, because that was attached to it, the heat shield, the parachute, a little bit of monopropellant, and a blader from the heat shield. And 3 XP was gained, probably because Jebediah walked on the surface of Minmus. So that's that. Okay, and so now if we go into mission control. Alright, so that mission is no longer there. So if we look in here, science data from surface of Minmus. So we finished this. It's from Winter Owl Aircraft Emporium. So that's the mission we completed. Alright. We got 69,267 and 4 science and some reputation points, I think.